Hi, thanks so much for tuning in to the South Miami-Dade Cultural Arts Center's Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami Dance Talk in support of their performances on July 16th and 17th. I'm Annie Hoffman. I'm the Education and Outreach Manager here at the South Miami-Dade Cultural Arts Center. This opportunity is brought to you with support from the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, the Board of County Commissioners, and the Office of the Mayor. Our panelists this evening will be providing visual descriptions as they introduce themselves for those who are blind or have low vision. My visual description is I have pale white skin, shoulder length straight blonde hair, I'm wearing glasses, a black shirt, and I have a virtual background of the South Miami-Dade Cultural Arts Center behind me. I would now like to introduce our moderator, journalist Jordan Levin, who will introduce our distinguished panelists. Jordan?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming back for our ongoing dance talks, our dance conversations. Let's see, my visual description is I am a white woman in late middle age with chin length, gray-brown hair, a dark green scoop neck dress, and a background of posters, pictures, and desperately old-fashioned CDs. We're here with Carlos Guerra and Jennifer Kronenberg, co-founders, co-directors of our beloved Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami. Yanis Eric Pikieris, one of their dancers and one of the choreographers that they've fostered. And Helen Simoneau, who is new to Miami and new to Dimensions. We're very excited to have her. She is originally from Canada, based in North Carolina, and has just received her first commission from Dimensions and will be performing with her company later this summer at the center. Jennifer, you and I spoke for a little bit earlier this week, and we talked about what you're going for when you do these programs. You have a history ever since you started of commissioning new work, both from choreographers in Miami and choreographers outside. It's really the backbone of what Dimensions does. So can you and Carlos talk a little bit about what you're aiming for, what you're interested in when you go looking for new work?
Sure. First, I'll start with visual description. I have medium white skin. I have shoulder length brown hair. I'm sitting next to my handsome husband, Carlos. And we're both sitting in front of a light gray wall with a bulletin board and many schedules behind us. You want to give your...
Yes, my name is Carlos Guerra, and I have a white skin, dark brown hair, and I'm wearing a navy blue shirt, and I'm sitting next to my lovely wife. And we're sitting right in front of the gray wall as well.
And today, Carlos has an extremely sexy low voice.
I am.
So I think, and you can add if you have any different ideas, but I think collectively when we try to program each season, we are trying to strike a balance between bringing in choreographers that we identify with, and also choreographers that will challenge our dancers, that will help take the company to the next level, but also pay respect to tradition and to our legacies, what the legacy that we grew up with, what we were trained with, and yeah, just find a nice balance between all of those, both for our dancers and for the audience and for the community. I think we agree that we can't really successfully take the next step into the future if we don't fully understand where we came from. So we always try to keep that in mind when we're programming.
We also try to think on the pieces or whatever we see from the choreographers, the pieces that they have done on the previous, right? If there will be something, that will be something that it will suit our dancers, or, you know, challenge them. We know our dancers very well, so we know between us and the choreographer that will get them there, move forward, and, you know, give them that kind of challenge.
I want to one follow up. So Jennifer and Carlos, when you talk about the legacy and tradition that you come from, can you tell us what that is for people who don't know your biography by heart like I do?
Well, mine is very steeped in the Balanchine training, from the School of American Ballet to my time at Miami City Ballet. And then that goes on. I mean, I'm not first generation with Balanchine, but through Edward Villela, he really ingrained in us a special way of dancing and moving and hearing music, and just really thinking about how to approach.
Yeah, for me, I come from Cuba with a very base classical training. And then I went to Chile, also a lot of training, classical training there, which I was introducing a lot of Balanchine ballets as well over there. But when I came here and I joined Miami City Ballet with Edward, that changed my mind completely. And in a way of like moving and approaching the steps and all that. So that was completely different than what I have learned before. And just a completely different approach into the steps and the movements.
And we don't have those ballets necessarily in our repertoire, but we still look for, I think we inherently look for a certain way of moving, or a certain way of being musical. Yeah, that it's automatic.
Yeah, one of the things that I had a lot of problems when I joined Miami City Ballet was the small allegros. Small jump.
Allegro.
Small jumps, petite
Yep.
allegros. And because the way we approach it in Cuba and the classical is completely different than the Balanchine. So Edward used to always tell me, keep your weight forward, stay closer to the ground, attack. So for me, it was really difficult that. And now what I try to pass to our dancers is, both of us in our classes and those petite allegro is that attack on the steps, to move forward and just keep it, your weight forward and on the back. It slows you down if you go out in the back. So that's are things that we're trying to, keep up and learn with Edward a lot.
Yanis, Eric, and Helen, before we get to the pieces that you've made or are still making for Dimensions, I'd like to hear what you consider your legacy, your tradition. So I'm just going to preface that by saying, so Yanis Eric is the son of Eric Pikieris, who is from Colombia, but danced with Miami City Ballet, so comes from also a dual South American and Balanchine traditions. And so Yanis Eric has those in him, but also his father specifically. And then Helen, I was interested to read that you started dancing late, and you are of course a contemporary dancer. And in the little bit of video I've seen, I see movement and a style of moving that reminds me of Trisha Brown and Stephen Petronio and that kind of late, from the 80s on, kind of release-based work. And yet you're making dances for ballet companies. So Yanis, Eric, if we could start with you, what's your tradition? What's your legacy? And how does it show in the dances you make?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm a white male in my unfortunately late 20s now. I'm wearing a black shirt, I have light brown hair, and I'm in a bedroom with a bed with green sheets and a very large tapestry. Yeah, so I also came from Miami City Ballet, so where I trained. So my background is also steeped in Balanchine, and I love it, and I love the speed, and especially for me, who's a shorter person, a shorter dancer, I feel like the Balanchine style and the Balanchine technique really fits for me because I can move quickly. I love to jump. I love to do all those things. It's my favorite thing to do in class is petit allegro. I will do 1,000 of them if the teacher wants to give them. Like when I teach class, I always try to do a lot of them. So I have the same principles. Like petit allegro is the most important thing. But after my time at Miami City Ballet, I was also at Charlotte Ballet, which is a little bit more contemporary. Well, it's a lot more now. It's a lot more contemporary. At the time, it was kind of half and half. But we had Patricia McBride there, who was also first generation Balanchine, Edward Villela's partner for pretty much everything. And so I learned from her so many things that just reinforced everything that I was learning at Miami City Ballet. But on top of that, we also had Dwight Roden as our resident choreographer. And they were bringing in a lot of choreographers with contemporary backgrounds, and we were learning all that. I remember learning a ballet by Alonzo King around that time, and all these people. And so I think that I learned a lot about myself and how I like to move from working with those different choreographers, and just kind of like finding ways of moving that I wasn't moving when I was at Miami City Ballet, because we weren't doing as much contemporary or modern classes. So here I had much more of a sort of outlet for that, I think. And I choreographed my first two things at Charlotte Ballet for our little student choreographic thing. And so I felt a real pressure to be very contemporary because of the things that were coming out of there were very contemporary at the time. But I think somewhere in there, I found my voice of a little bit of both, contemporary, but also classical sometimes, but also contemporary, and whatever the music tells me, So little ramble.
Oh, that's cool. Helen, what's your tradition, so to speak?
Well, first of all, I am a white woman with a black turtleneck and glasses and blue eyes, and my hair is about chin length, and it is sort of a mix of brown and blonde at the moment. And my lineage, I think all of the ones you mentioned are spot on. I would also add Cunningham to that. So I did some of my earliest training. Well, I started late, but when I started, I really was doing Cunningham and ballet. Those were the first two things I started doing. And they connected well for me. They made sense as an introduction. And it's interesting that we're talking about Petit Allegro is the theme right now that we're talking about. My Cunningham teacher, Brenda Daniels, really wonderful teacher. She would always say, "Oh, I really like modern dancers need to do Petit Allegro." So she would always put it at the end of the class, right before big jumps, and she would put it in the Cunningham class because she thought, this is something we all need to do. So I also am a fan. Though,
Fan of watching it.
Yeah, but I think all the lineages you mentioned are all kind of together, but I think one of the interests in my choreographic work is really rooted in form. And so I think that's where the ballet and the Cunningham really come through in my work. And I think the release technique finds its way in some of the softer, more circular parts of my choreography.
Can you say a little bit more about when you say rooted in form? Tell us what you mean by that. And maybe Yanis Eric, Carlos, and Jennifer, you can talk about, if it makes sense, what does form mean in ballet to you? Form is so central to ballet. I'm sorry. Yeah. So go ahead, Helen. What do you mean?
Well, for me, it really is about shapes, and really defined shapes, and shapes that show also the training and the facility of the dancer. And so for me, it's really the pleasure of finding the shape and then figuring out how to innovatively go in and out of it. But I like to see that kind of clarity. One of a dancer I worked with for a long time, she said I was a geometric witch. And that made sense to me. Like I like linear, I like the shapes, I like angular. And then I have pleasure in figuring out how to move in and out of it.
Do Yanis Eric or Carlos and Jennifer, either of you feel like saying what form means to you? Because it's so integral to ballet, right? And one of the things that it's sort of interesting with contemporary, how far can contemporary ballet go away from classical form and still call it, and you can still call it ballet?
I think ballet is rooted in shapes, much the same way as Helen was describing. I mean, we're making shapes essentially with everything that we do, from the 5 positions to an arabesque to really all of it. And then you're extending from those shapes. Like Balanchine took the classical shape or the classical 4th position and he just extended it, which makes a new shape. It doesn't, you know, take the shape away. It just extends it into another.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Yanis, Eric, and Helen, the pieces that you'll be making. So Yanis, Eric, I understand your piece is called No 5, number 5. And I understand it started years ago, got put on hold, and you brought it back in part because of an injury that limited some other things you could do. So could you tell us about number 5?
Yeah, so I started choreographing it with a friend just for fun, a chunk of it in 2021, like early 2021. And Jennifer saw it and she liked what we were doing and told us to keep going. And it was supposed to be for a show that we were going to do, I think in March 2021. The show was canceled and never happened. And so we just kind of, you know, we're like, okay, cool, we filmed it, let's shelf it. One day it'll come up. And so now when it was coming up that I was going to do another piece, I had one thing in mind that I was really excited about, but I injured myself very badly in December. I ruptured my Achilles tendon, which had me in a boot, which limited everything, like I couldn't do anything. And so I started becoming very worried about whether I would have anything, whether I would be able to choreograph anything and have it ready for our lab shows that we just did this past, I think it was April or March. And then to also be able to expand on that for July. Like I didn't know what my timeline was going to be like. Also because it took me forever to like get seen and it was like a whole thing. So I just out of caution, I thought, you know what if we bring back that stuff that we did a year ago? We have videos of everything. Let's relearn it. That's a good chunk there. And then, hopefully I'm good before July and then I can finish the ballet. But I ended up being fine. I actually didn't have to get surgery. I didn't all these things. So when we got back into it, I had the boot on, but I was doing a lot better and I was a lot more mobile. And so I actually ended up being really happy with the fact that we chose to finish this, because I was like, I kind of hated that we put a bookmark in it. I kind of rather finish this and then go on to the next thought later on. So that's how that happened.
So what's the genesis of the piece? Or tell us about the piece, the music, it's the sections. Is it more contemporary? Is it more classical?
I think in terms of things that I've done for the company, it's more classical. I think it's sections of it. What I realized is that depending on when I choreographed certain chunks of it, they're ranging between classical and more contemporary, especially when I had the boot. Everything that happened when I had the boot on is a little bit more classical because it was easier for me to get those thoughts across, because I don't have to do as much of it myself when I'm showing the dancers. But more of the things that I've been doing now as I'm finishing the ballet have gotten more contemporary. But I think that works for the piece in the sense that there are 3 movements and all 3 kind of have a very different mood and style. The first one I've been saying is a little bit more playful. The music is a little happier and it kind of has like more of a fun feeling, whereas the middle section is a little bit more intimate, I think. It has 2 pas de deux in the center, 2 duets that are a little bit more intimate in their own way, especially one of them. And then the third movement has become more sporty and edgy and athletic. And so I feel like the ballet kind of goes through all of these different things. But I think that they show different facets of what the dimensions dancers can do. And I think that that's more than anything, as I've been choreographing the ballet, it became more about that as I said this before, that not only is it like a cool sort of landmark for me as my 5th ballet for the company, which is why I named it number 5. But it's also ending our 5th anniversary season. So I thought that was a cool little intersection of those 2 sort of milestones. And so I just wanted to do something that was beautiful and not necessarily about anything but the music, which I was super inspired by. It's an album of Bach music that was recomposed by a composer named Peter Gregson, who took all of this music and kind of changed. In some sections, he changed a bunch of it, and in other sections, he kind of kept the integrity of what Bach's original music was. But overall, it creates this very interesting landscape. There's parts of it that are very trancey, and there are parts of it that are very like jovial and energetic. And so I thought that it was like a great vehicle for Dimensions to kind of just show a little bit of everything from all the dancers, kind of to show where we've come from, like from day one to now, 5 years later. It's, the company is so much bigger. The company is, it's a whole other thing now. And so, yeah, like it's a lot of things. It's a mix.
It almost sounds like the music is a structural equivalent to what contemporary ballet is. You start with this very formal, ordered, classical base, and then expanding and riffing, I guess, on that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Helen, tell us about smallest orbits. Your pieces have really intriguing and very short names, even one-word names that pack a punch. But tell us about smallest orbits, and tell us about how a choreographer from Canada connected with a company directors in Miami too.
Well, I met Jennifer when we were both we are part of this initiative at South Arts, bringing Southern companies together. And there are 5 companies that were selected for this program, and both of our companies were, and we started talking, and then I started to get to know more about Dimensions, and I really wanted to choreograph for the company. So I just asked, I said, I would like to do this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just was like, this is something I'd like to do. Please think about it. And they were gracious enough to invite me to make a work. And so smallest orbits. Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what appealed to you about Dimensions?
I really loved the contemporary ballet, the range of ballets that were presented that I was seeing online. This is all online stuff. I never got to see it in person until I came. And I also was really impressed with the dancing and the dancers. And it seemed like quite a range, a diversity of people in the room. And that was really exciting to me.
Cool. Okay, nice. Are you smiling, Jennifer and Carlos? So, and tell us about smallest orbits.
So smallest orbits, I came in March and made about half of it, I guess. And what I presented at the lab, actually, I thought was going to be the second movement. And actually, after I saw it live, I think this is what was so exciting about having that opportunity to share with the public, is I got to see the work performed. And then I said, no, this is the beginning. This is not the end. This is the beginning. So I changed my mind about the whole order of the piece. And I was working with a composer I've known for a really long time named Michael Wall. And so I hadn't decided which piece of music I would use, but I came with a bunch of his music, and I settled on this one piece, which is piano. It's very melodic and kind of romantic in its structure. And so what I decided to do is to work with the 2 couples, and thinking about this. The title came out of this idea of the pathways that we take every day. So if you were to track your pathway, leaving the house, going to wherever you're going and coming back, and how during the pandemic, all of our pathways became much smaller and our orbits became smaller, and just thinking about orbiting with the people around you, and thinking about the people that you live with, or the people that live in your building, the people that you see every day, or just are in proximity to, but perhaps don't know. And I was thinking about like trying to hold on to connection in a time of isolation, when your orbits are quite small, and just saying hello to people and staying open to connecting with strangers that live with you in your community. And so the beginning of the ballet, the 2 couples, they're dancing on stage at the same time, but they really do not intersect with each other until later in the section. That's about a 5-minute section, what I've made so far. And that was me sort of playing out, like, what happens when you're living alongside and we just have no idea what people are going through. and what happens when we start to connect and investigate and welcome. So that was really where I am with it. And I'm not honestly sure exactly where it's going to go from there, but I have more time. I have 6 full days in the studio, so I'm excited about that. And I also, a really exciting thing too, is that I was working with the second piece of music, but it just felt like it wasn't gelling with the first piece. And we were able to get a commission from Michael to add a second movement that's original for this piece.
Oh,
That was super exciting. And he made something so beautiful. I think that just pairs perfectly with the first half.
wonderful. It's so interesting. You talk about that it sounds like this piece is really simultaneously all about form, right? Patterns,
Mhm.
pathways,
Yeah.
reducing those. And yet it's also a profoundly human story, you know, how our world shrunk during the pandemic, how we were isolated from each other. And I'm going to assume there's nothing stagey or theatrical about the way you express that. It's purely in the dancing, right? In
Yeah.
the way you in the way you've set up the choreography. But and now whoever is watching this, you're going to have a clue about what that all means. But people who don't, like, will they get it? Or will they get some sense of what you mean or not? We don't know.
I don't know. I think for me, it's not so important that they get exactly what I intended, because I think there's multiple meanings possible in abstract work. That's part of what I like about work that is, it has a narrative, like it has a beginning, middle, and an end, and each dancer has their own journey within that. But it's not like a story that's clear, absolute for everybody. I like that about work that's a little bit more contemporary in that way, because I do think people can come to it with different meanings, and everybody comes to the audience with their own perception, and everybody perceives things slightly differently. So within a world of what's possible, I think the multiple meanings, I think, is exciting to me. I don't know if they'll see exactly the story that I just explained, but I think that they might notice the way that the dancers are, the patterns that the dancers are making, and the way that they're intersecting or not intersecting. And I think another thing that's important in telling the story is the way that they see each other. When are they seeing each other? When are they not seeing each other? How are they seeing each other? And what moments are they dancing with blinders on and not noticing the others? And when are they really curious about the people around them? This is stuff that we'll talk more about as we prepare for the show, but the details of seeing, I think, are important part of the final touches.
Jennifer, so Helen, you really come from a modern dance background, and yet you're drawn to also choreographing for ballet companies.
Yes.
And Jennifer, you told me that one of the reasons Helen was interested in working with Dimensions was the challenge for you, Helen, of working on point.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for you and Carlos, Jennifer, it's also about like challenging your dancers to move in a different way. Did the two of you talk about that? Like, Helen, what drew you to the company and how you're going to deal with working with classical dancers who've maybe never heard of Merce Cunningham or Trisha Brown? And Jennifer and Carlos, like, ditto. She, I don't know if you've been on point, Helen, but
I have, yeah, just in my training only.
Okay. What's good for your dancers about working with a choreographer who's not a ballet choreographer?
Helen, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we ever had like an overt conversation about all of this, but I think it was somehow understood. And of course, in inviting Helen in, I did my research and Carlos joined me. So we knew that
we did something also
yeah,
during the pandemic.
right. But I'm saying before
Yeah.
that, the original time the first time that we brought Helen to do something, we know her background, and I knew that she had a classical, vocabulary and understanding in her training, and so she would be able to understand where our dancers were coming from and take them a step beyond their own comfort zones, and also maybe find a challenge for herself in trying to get the movement and the form and all of this that she envisioned while still working with the point shoe, which is a very precarious thing, and a balance that needs to be negotiated constantly, and finding how to take that balance off of the center and still be able to go up on point. So yeah, that back and forth exchange between choreographer and dancer to make this happen, I thought was going to be a really interesting experience.
It's also the challenging on the partnering stuff. The duets is completely different, where the guy, for example, has to put the weight of the girl in on the point that is in terms of like if she's flat. So yeah, I mean, but yeah, I think Helen understood everything from the beginning also, and
there's a bit of
we love what she had done with our dancer and the level in the next level that she has taken them.
There's a lot of trust, I think, that goes into it too. You look at somebody's background and you see the prior works that they've done and who they've worked with, and just in conversation, and you trust that they're going to take it to the next level. And then you wait and you see how it all pans out. But that's the beautiful thing about commissioning, is that you never quite know what you're going to get, and that's beautiful.
We have to take chances.
Yeah. That's like a lovely risk.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I definitely had, I had done some work on point, but not as much as I wanted to. And so I had sent some videos. I had done a piece for Oregon Ballet Theater that had point work in it. And I just felt like I could do more with it if I just had more practice. And then there's also something that I really love about point, like to mix it with like the what I'm asking of the dancers is really, they need to be able to do a pirouette on point, and then they also need to be able to like go into the undercurve, into the floor, into a deep plie, and then rise up out of that into a double attitude. And they are able to do all of that. And not everybody can do both that way. There's something really special about the versatility of the dancers.
Nice. I can't wait to see this piece, both these. So we also wanted to talk, so both your pieces, Yanis Eric and Helen, sound fundamentally abstract. They're about dancing, structure, music, the capacity of the dancers, form. There's a huge amount, there's a big movement in the culture in the last several years for art in general to address social issues that are really shaking our culture and our country. And it's a pendulum that I think has gone on for a long time between more socially aware, socially driven artwork and work that is more abstract, more about form, structure, and ideas. Does the direction of the culture right now, Jennifer and Carlos, does it affect you all in terms of what you think about presenting or commissioning? Yanis Eric, does it affect you as you think about projects? And ditto for you, Helen, or not? But I'd just be interested hearing from all four of you how you feel about this and if it affects you as artists in any way.
Certainly, it's something that we consider when we're programming. That being said, I think our primary wish and intent is for each choreographer to be, to have the platform to be honest. We don't want anything to feel contrived, to be pre-planned,
Right.
set out. I mean, we want the choreographers to be able to share their own voice and share what they want to say in the way that they want to say it. Sometimes that's going to be a very clear social statement. Sometimes it's not. And we don't want to pigeonhole somebody into feeling like they have to make a
Right.
statement because that's what is expected right now. I certainly think that there's a place for all of it, just like there's a place in literature for science fiction and adventure and romance. And there's all this beautiful range within the literary world. There so should be in the dance world. And so the need for one does not cancel out the need for the other. I think the more variety that we have and the more variety we can expose our dancers to and our audiences to, the bolder the statement that these pieces that do have a social comment will be, and the deeper they'll be able to resonate, because it won't just be one after the other. You know, it'll actually stand out and have a significance. You know, it's like when you're eating a meal, you don't just have one bold flavor after another. Sometimes you need a palate cleanser to be able to appreciate the flavors of each food. I feel that way in the dance as well.
I totally agree with you.
Yanis Eric, does this play a role in your thinking, your dance making, or not? Or how do you feel about it?
I think in general, I watch a lot of ballet, seeing what ballet companies are doing, and I love to see ballets that have a social message, and I love, you know, seeing what people are able to do. I think personally, I'm not much of a storyteller. I feel like that's not something that I'm good at, and I rather leave that to people who have more of something. I feel like for me, since music is my main motivator for everything, I just love beautiful music and want to choreograph beautiful things to beautiful music. I rarely have like a super set, you know, plot or anything for the things that I choreograph. And so I think that while I love to see it and I encourage it, you know, me personally, I don't know where you know, how I would be able to do that, because I feel like it's not, my vocabulary doesn't sort of work for it. I don't know. It's not something that I generally think about for myself, because I see so many other people doing it. I rather that they continue to do what they do. And I can just, you know, make my little ballets.
Do you feel like there's any pressure in any way at any time, like, oh, this is what would get funding, so I should move that way, or this is what I see all around me on social media, what everybody's talking about, or not?
I think not yet. I think more like, you know, when I see it, I don't feel like I want to be like that or do that because I see it. But I see it and I like it, you know, like you know, I rather stick with what I do and what I know than try to fit another mold, you know, just because I saw it that I have to do it. I haven't felt any pressure to do that yet. And I think that that's because Jen and Carlos give us so much freedom to express ourselves however we want when we're choreographing or dancing or anything.
Helen, what do you think?
I have so many thoughts about this.
Good.
I think for me, I have to be honest in the way that Jennifer was talking, this opportunity to be honest about what is my way, and my way is a more subtle way. So I think within this abstract work, there are a lot of very political choices that I'm making, and I think that the company, like even in if you look at the 4 dancers that I'm working with, that is a statement that these 4 dancers who are quite diverse cast are all dancing together. Like that's a political statement. We're not.
So I'm sorry, before you go on, tell us who those 4 dancers are and how they're diverse.
They're racially diverse.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they are paired together. Some of them are in duets. And for me, there's something political or just at the base of that these people are racially diverse and dancing in romantic ways with each other, that is a statement. The diversity of the company to me is a statement that we want to see people together. And so that's one thing. And then I also think a lot about the things sometimes I see in ballet that are specifically in pas de deux with men and women, that there can be some just very casual misogyny that comes up. There can be sort of an expectation that the man should dominate the woman. And I choose not to do that. It's just my way. I'm not shouting it as like, this should be the only way. I'm just saying, this is my way. And I want to normalize this. I want to normalize an equality between these two people as they're dancing together. So one is not the leader all the time, and one is not the follower all the time, but they both share that story together. They're both pushing the narrative along together. And that's super important to me. So I think that there are some, I wouldn't say that my work is political. I don't think anyone watching it would say it's political, but I think it is, there's a lot of very political choices that I make within it.
It's interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
No, I was just gonna add a little bit to what Helen is saying, because it really, it shows, because dance is such a human art form, and because it's such a language unto itself, it's really unique in being a way to be able to communicate with other people, that all of these messages, all of these socio-political statements, right? They're there no matter what. Just the fact that a choreographer living in this century is creating work, automatically their language is going to reflect what they're living, the society that they're living in, the world that they're living in. Sometimes it'll be a bit more literal, sometimes it'll be abstract, sometimes it'll be really profound and in your face, and this is what I want to say, and sometimes it'll be softer like Helen is, but there's always something there. Yeah, I don't think it always needs to be pow, this is it, you know, it's there if you look for it, if you want to see it.
I love also what she had done with these four dancers, how they dance together and how they share partnering in between them, because also there are, one of them has a completely different technique, like Chloe, for example. It's not like classical. They all have a completely different technique, but how she has unified them and danced together, and you know, it's quite amazing. And yes, all the message I think is there. You know,
I think the body is, you know, it's abstract work, but the body can only be so abstract. Like you said, Jennifer, we are human. And so that comes across as in what we represent, what each body represents. And I think for me, you know, my work is always going to be feminist work. It's just who I am. But it might not be obvious or overt.
And it is, I'll say, and Helen, I think you write your own grants as well. It is becoming a challenge in grant writing and in funding requests, because a lot of the questions that you're finding is, what statement are you trying to make? What are you trying to say? Why are you the right one to say this? And yes, those are absolutely valid questions, but how do you take a work that has weight and has validity, like number 5 does, and answer those questions and make it seem like it has relevance? Absolutely has relevance, but not necessarily within those borders of that question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you don't want to be disingenuous about it. Like you
don't
want to be making, you know, like I feel like I can have certain political messages within my work that are more subtle, but as a white woman, I have no business making a piece about race, you know, so how to do it in a way that's respectful of, you know, the identity of the author, and also understanding you know, what the grant wants to hear, and what you feel like you can make authentically.
Mm-hmm. Helen, when you talked about partnering and how there can be a kind of casual misogyny, or in classical pas de deux, and certainly very set roles, right, which are both physical, mechanical, supported lifts, supported turns, for instance. The woman being on point, which gives her, extends her abilities, her capacity, what she can do, right? She can do all those turns on point, but also limits them sometimes, that she needs someone or something for balance. And those are just, they're physical, right? They're mechanical, technical, and yet they're also tell us a lot about a relationship between these two people. And I also thought what flashed in my mind was the pas de deux from Egon, which was such a revolutionary part of a revolutionary ballet in the way the man and the woman trade support, trade dominance, trade, who's higher and lower. And they're simultaneously trading power and enormously interdependent. And yet it's never really about a relationship that extends beyond the physical relationship they're having on stage right there. And yet it tells you so much.
It's a lot of like, it's like 100 small choices that led to that, every lean, every balance, every way that was created. It might not be an overt statement about that, but within it, there's a lot of smaller choices, I think.
And Jennifer and Carlos, help me, wasn't the, what was the original cast for that pas de deux and Egon?
Arthur Mitchell and Diana Adams.
Right. And especially at that moment in the 50s, that casting was an enormous statement.
Yeah.
I don't think Balanchine ever talked about it.
And that's really interesting.
So, is there anything else? I sort of feel like I've run, I'm at the end of the questions that I had planned. Is there anything else that any of you want to say? Yanis Eric, your 5th work for the company in 5 years. Anything you want to tell us about how you've grown over that time as a dance maker?
I think that I'm a lot more confident in the choices that I make. I think I used to be very self-conscious about everything I would do, because I wasn't sure if people would like it or if I would like it or if I was convinced by it or whatever. I think I'm a lot more confident that like I can pull it together, or confident that it'll make sense, or I don't know. I think I'm just more confident in my choices overall. I think when I was starting out, I would have to go back over and do everything a million times to make sure that I got it right. Because I'll listen to a piece of music and I could see it a million ways and be like, okay, but I could have done it like this, but I could have done it like this. And then I would go back and forth to think which one was the right one. But I think now I'm a little bit more deliberate, and I'm a little bit more, like I have a little bit more of a vision of what I mean. And then I just try to translate that as best as I can to the dancers.
Nice.
No, I just want to say that it's incredible seeing him through all these years choreographing for the company. The amount of confidence now for number 5, for example, that he's projecting and putting into the dancers, and the challenge that he give each of them in their duets or solos or ballets. It's we see how much he has grown in all these years. It's great for the dancers too. They see it, and the challenging that he's bringing on them constantly, the speed. It's really great. It's been a beautiful process seeing him grow.
He's really, we've seen him develop his own voice and his own language that now is consistently being carried through each work that he does, as different as they all are from each other. and he says, I have a little bit more of a vision about, he has he's incredible. That's one of the things that we saw from that. Like, he has these ideas and he gets into the studio and you see his mind, like you just see his mind as he's working with the dancers. And to me, to Carlos and I, that's brilliant. And yes, it takes time to harness that and further develop that, but it's there. I mean, it's just there. And I hope that when he will go out and choreograph for other companies, he takes all that experience that he has here. And because here it's family, like
Right.
you can mess up, you can make mistakes, you can change it, you can do whatever. There's that freedom to do that without the pressure of being judged. It's quite a different experience than, you have 6 days in the studio to create something and you put it boom on stage, and will they ask you back to do it again or not? So we hope that he'll take everything that he's developing here and fly with it.
Helen, that's wonderful. Helen, anything you feel like a need to say? And if not, I have a question, which is how you feel about showing in Miami, which is a really unique city with, talk about diverse audience and this company.
It feels really great. I got a little taste of it when we did the lab. And I found the audience to be super enthusiastic and friendly and welcoming and really comfortable asking questions. And I loved having conversation, within the post-performance discussion, but then also spilling out into outside the theater and people saying, offering what they experienced and having questions. And I love intersecting with an engaged audience like that. And I think that's a testament to what Carlos and Jennifer have cultivated. And I have to say also, for me as a choreographer coming in, I felt so trusted and so welcomed by everybody. And so I feel like I was able to make work in an ideal environment because I had all the support, and any idea, whether it worked out or not, the dancers was like, let's just try it. It's just, everybody is just enthusiastic and excited about ballet.
Oh, all right. And on that note, I think that's a good way and excited about ballet. Annie?
Thank you so much, Jordan, and thank you to our panelists for participating in this dance talk and just bringing us a really rich and beautiful conversation. And thank you to you for tuning in. Tickets for the in-person Dimensions Dance Theater of Miami performances at the South Miami-Dade Cultural Arts Center on July 16th and 17th are available now. Please go to our website at smdcac.org to get your tickets. We look forward to seeing you there. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.